Welcome, history fanatics, to Mrs. Heron's video playlist, where you will get the best of the best in social studies. We're starting in Unit 1, I Pledge Allegiance, U.S. Civics. The goal for this unit is to analyze the principles that underlie the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. We're studying chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, I wanted to do a quick recap over the creation of the Constitution. It will cover chapter 5, sections 1 and 2.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers with the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these... Happy birthday, America!
When we left off last, the Declaration had just been adopted and the country was celebrating the new birth of our nation. The states were officially considered free and independent, meaning they could establish their own laws, governments, and constitutions. The last thing the states wanted was another tyrant in power, so they elected to not have a strong national government. The states gave the most power to the legislative branch. Within a year, a very loose national government had been formed between the 13 individual states. The document that outlined this loose government was called the Articles of Confederation. It allowed Congress the power to declare war, make treaties, and make trade agreements. However, Congress would not have the power to raise taxes or enforce the law. It took 4 years for all 13 states to ratify the Articles of Confederation, but in 1781 they were fully adopted. At the end of the Revolutionary War, America owed a great deal of money to other nations. States felt pressure to raise their taxes on their citizens, which left poor farmers and merchants feeling like they were having the sting of England all over again. By 1786, a massacre known as Shays' Rebellion saw the end of the Articles of Confederation, which left a lot of people to agree that we actually did need a strong national government. In May of 1787, the delegates from the congressional conventions came together to completely rewrite our founding document. As opposed to just revise the Articles of Confederation, they decided that we needed a whole new document called the Constitution. They called these new meetings the Constitutional Convention, and they agreed that they would be top secret and they would be extremely thorough. They met 6 days a week for 6 hours a day and had no lunch breaks. There were a lot of conflicts as to what would be fair for each of the states, and one of these conflicts was over how many representatives a state would be entitled to have. This led to a great compromise between the large state of Virginia and the small state of New Jersey. Roger Sherman of Connecticut suggested that both states could get what they wanted if they used what's called a bicameral legislature, which is just splitting the legislature into House of Representatives and the Senate. The Senate would remain the same no matter how large a state was. They would have the same amount of representatives, which is 2. And the House would be based on state population, so a larger state like Virginia would still get more votes. Can you think of what problem this could create? Well, slave states wanted to count their slaves as part of the population, but they considered their slaves property. So that didn't go over too well with the non-slaveholding states, because they felt like it would give the South too much power. So they decided that slaves would only be counted as 3/5 of a person to compromise with the southern states. Finally, the delegates also decided that we did indeed need a judicial and an executive branch. The executive branch would also operate under the authority of the president, and the judicial branch would interpret the laws and settle conflicts among states. They had the Supreme Court. They formed the Electoral College to elect the president and allowed only white men with property to vote for their House members. The Constitution was signed by 39 delegates and implemented over 200 years ago on September 17, 1787. Those delegates have come to be known as the Framers. Some people did not fully trust this new national government and opposed the Constitution altogether. They became known as the Anti-Federalists. They felt that the wording of the Constitution left them vulnerable to an abuse of power. The Federalists were the opposite. They supported the Constitution, and they felt a strong national government was necessary for the protection of the people. Several Federalists formed a pro-Constitution newspaper called The Federalist in response to the backlash against the Constitution. Again, a compromise was made, and the Federalists agreed to formulate a Bill of Rights in exchange for the ratification of the Constitution. And in early 1790, all 13 states had ratified the Constitution, and our country was truly born. To review, on July 4, 1776, the colonists declared their independence from Britain and formed their own independent government under the Articles of Confederation. When the Articles failed, the framers wrote the Constitution, and they replaced the Articles. The Federalists agreed with the Constitution, and the Anti-Federalists disagreed, but they compromised with the Bill of Rights in exchange for ratification.